Did most of your colleagues from your student days, the Ukrainian-Canadian student, wind up in the Canadian Armed Forces, and did they mostly volunteer, or what was the situation?
The spirit was such that it would be adventurous. You join up somewhere. I know one dentist in the dental corps was rather displeased with his position, because he wanted to be more involved. He thought he'd join the infantry. I don't think they let him, because he was more useful working on patients rather than carrying a 303. But I think for young people at that time, it's an adventure. Also, during the adventuresome days, you might do some good somewhere, and if they send you someplace to go, so you go. It wasn't too much of a reservation about going. I remember, for instance, which a moment that comes back to me, when finally, because at the time I joined, I was married and had a son 6 months of age. And getting on the train in Hamilton to Toronto, and then from there to Halifax, it was in the spirit of adventure. I was rather surprised that coming to Union Station, I found other people like Dr. Lusick, Dr. Joe Kulik, somebody from Winnipeg, were getting sort of together and heading for Halifax. And there were some girls there who were in tears, and I thought that was quite funny that women should be affected and be in tears because we're going. You see, you move from day to day, and from Toronto to Hamilton, from Hamilton to Toronto, from Toronto to Halifax, and when you're going to get overseas, it remains to be seen. So you take one day at a time.
Now, were many Ukrainian Canadians in the Canadian Armed Forces?
Yes, I think the disposition was that there may be something happening, that these are crucial moments. Europe will be rearranged, and hopefully with Ukrainian independence, and you wanted to be participants in what was going on. And I think there was a feeling of duty, especially when the attitudes of the Anglo-Saxons, in my estimation, was very good. Lord Tweedsmuir making a statement that you are better Canadians if you are good Ukrainians, and that confirms what we were thinking all along, except somebody prominent has to restate our thinking. So so there was no conflict of objectives there. We thought we can do both, and certainly the leadership in some organizations, especially in the Ukrainian Samosteyniku, Ukrainian Self-Reliance League, with which I had, which direction I was inclined to believe, that we should participate fully, and as participants in whatever goes on, whether it's politics, the army, or municipal politics, then we're more likely to attain our other objective. I thought I'd prevail on him to take me for a ride, because I haven't been anywhere except in southern England. And so I skipped by train to London, and he was leaving Saturday morning for Athens. So in order to do that, he said, I'll have to give you my uniform. It was probably a little irregular, and I put on his uniform. It was a little tight on me, I recall, with his medals especially. There is a term for that. Anyhow, he says, anybody asks you, you're my second spare pilot. So that's what I was, flying overseas. Stopped in Marseille for filling of gas or whatever it was, and then on to Rome, And we stayed at Piazza Venezia Hotel. I recall that name very well. And he went on to Athens, and he says, well, don't talk to anybody, and don't tell anybody what you're doing here, and don't get involved. Stay put, and we'll pick you up on Tuesday. And walking along, I heard three fellows walking briskly past me, speaking Ukrainian. So I ran up, because я говорю по-українському. Ти говориш по-українськи. So, where are you from? I'm from Canada. Who are you fellows? And so on. So that was interesting. We started talking, walking, four of us now briskly, and ended up in Bishop Buchko's seminary, St. Joseph's.
Where were they from, these fellows?
They were from the seminary. They, I don't know where they lived, but they were hanging around St. Joseph's. And I hadn't heard of Bishop Buchko before, because at my age at that time I wasn't that interested in bishops. But anyhow, they made me wait in the corridor, and 10 minutes later or so, somebody came out and said, you may come in. I knew that was Bishop Buchko at that time, and I recall that scene very well, because what surprised me first was I'm short, or not tall, and he's still shorter. Come with me to Rimini. What's in Rimini? Where's Rimini? Northern Italy. And he says, our boys are there. Наши хлопцы. And how many? And 9,000 or so. Oh, didn't hear of Rimini or our boys in Northern Italy. But how long would it take? 8 hours by train, and that would boost their morale if somebody would come and meet them, with them, and so on.
Well, did he tell you who these people were?
Yes, our boys from Hochana. That's as much as I think I had learned at that time.
But did he tell you that they were in the German army during the war?
I'm not sure whether I became aware of that or not, but I was aware that they were in a camp, and that they may be repatriated. And at that time we were aware of the Yalta Agreement, and also the hazards of Ukrainians in those parts of Europe, because the repatriation was forcible. We were quite aware of that from various stories told by numerous soldiers. Anyhow, I could not agree with him. I could not concur to go north, because Joe was coming back from Athens, and I'd have to be available to fly back to England. Anyhow, we did return. Those boys came and picked me up again at Piazza Venezia the following day, and spent more time. And I remember meeting Father Prashko, who's now in Australia, I think, a bishop at that time, and they had a choir of some young fellows there in the seminary, which also impressed me. In other words, there were quite a few people there. What exactly their purpose were, but St. Joseph's was a bigger place, and they were doing whatever they were doing. Now that to me was exciting news, and when Joe got back, Ostap Romaniu, I call him Joe for short, I told him about my discovery, and he was excited about it.
This was about the 9,000 Ukrainians?
Yes, who were prisoners of war. And the following morning, we all came down to the lobby of Piazza Venezia, about 20-30 people from as passengers for the trip back to England. Joe goes to the other end of the lobby to the telephone booth, and comes out and says to the group, sorry, the weather's not permitting, we're staying till tomorrow morning. And then off we went to Bishop Buchko's place. And whether weather was permitting or not, I don't know. I am no expert in that. But we spent some time at Bishop Buchka's and discovered more information. Bishop had 5 cartons of letters which were written by these fellows, but there were no postal services in Rome, or in Italy generally, and the bishop wanted us to move these cartons of letters to London. From there we had the postal services functioning. And we did end up for supper at this place, and that was Mykola Labich.
I see.
So we had a discussion with him, which was interesting, and that's where we thought that those fellows needed help, especially from Canada, United States, and so on, because they would know the public opinion and so on. One of the questions which he was asking, I recall, he says, will there be a war with USSR within the 6 months or so?
Between the Allies
and the Soviets. And I said, no way, because the public opinion is not prepared. There's no way that there could be that conflict. And he said, well, we'll be in trouble if nothing happens within a year or so. I said, well, it'll take more than a year and probably more than 5 years to get to that stage, if we ever will. And obviously there was need of some viewpoints and opinions from other people. Anyhow, we got back to London, and with letters and documentation from General Shandruk and Krat, and that's where Panchuk didn't sleep nights. He usually doesn't. He sleeps like this, on his arm on a table.
So did you decide then that you were going to make some organized effort on behalf of the Ukrainian prisoners of war who were held by the Allies?
Contact Tracy Phillips.
Yes. What was his role, Tracy? What was his position?
I'm not sure what his role was, whether he was with intelligence, but he was certainly in contact with Panchuk. And that's when I understand that Tracy Phillips was informed as to who these 9,000 were, that they fought with the Germans on a special contract, and we were aware that repatriation was threatening. So Tracy apparently implied that he had a friend who could stall their deportation for a while by placing a question on the order paper in the House of Commons. And if I recall correctly, that young MP was Michael Foot. And more recently, I think he was the leader of the Labour Party. And that question I did read in Hansard, which means the inquiry about who were these people and what was happening to them. And I understand that Tracy Phillips said that would take about a month to answer after they investigate and then give the correct answer, which was given subsequently. So that was a stalling technique for at least that month. He wasn't sure what was going to happen subsequently. But I understand that their status from surrendered enemy personnel, SEP, to POWs was changed, and that made their lot a little better. And I lost track of that after.